Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Duthier. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. Check out these monitors behind me. These are feeds coming into the CBS News Broadcast Center from our affiliates and our stations around the country. If it's happening out there, we're going to bring it to you live right here. Let's begin. Donald Trump rallies his supporters after President Biden's controversial comment, while Vice President Harris tries to stay focused on policy. Breaking overnight, North Korea tests a ballistic missile capable of hitting the U.S. mainland as around 10,000 North Korean troops train in eastern Russia. And the Dodgers win. Dodgers win the World Series over the New York Yankees, which turned into chaos on the streets of L.A. We'll have a look at the looting and what Los Angeles police are calling violent celebrations. I mean, it is Los Angeles after all. This is CBS News 24/7. They love me out in L.A. They love me out in L.A. All right, the presidential campaigns are headed out west today with just 5 days until Election Day. Both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump will be in Arizona and Nevada today. Harris is bringing her campaign message to Phoenix, Reno, and Vegas. And Trump will speak to voters in Henderson and Glendale after a rally in New Mexico. Now, the former president has looked to capitalize on a gaffe by President Biden with a photo op on a garbage truck in Wisconsin yesterday as he tried to move beyond a scandal over racist remarks by some of the speakers at his New York rally.
Crooked Joe Biden finally said what he and Kamala really think of our supporters. He called them garbage. My response to Joe and Kamala is very simple. You can't lead America if you don't love Americans.
CBS News campaign reporter Jake Rosen is following the Trump campaign from Washington. So, Jake, I guess the question for people is the race really going to come down to the rhetoric between both campaigns, or are the policy pitches that they are making going to move the needle with voters? The question that I think everybody keeps asking me as somebody who is a journalist and works in media is, can people really be undecided at this point, this late in the game? Apparently, there are still some undecideds out there.
Well, there are, and that's what the final campaign stops for both campaigns are all about. But when you go back to the rhetoric that we've seen between the comments at Madison Square Garden all throughout that day, not just by that comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, but also President Biden's comments the other night in that Latino fundraising event, you really see what voters don't want to hear, which is this back and forth that we've seen for the last, couple months, and going back politics, 8 or 9 years, right? About as we get later in the game, it becomes more about what people's semantics and what people say and do versus what they're promising. And you even saw the other night, Kamala Harris come out with an appeal to a bipartisan appeal on the ellipse, and it gets the distraction because of President Biden's comments. You see former President Trump start his closing arguments at Madison Square Garden before this big campaign swing he's doing today into the end of the campaign. And even that gets distracted, too, because of those comments. So we've seen some frustration from the Trump campaign about how their message has been lost, and I'm sure there's certainly some from the Harris campaign as well. But we'll see exactly if any of these candidates can get back on message today while they're campaigning out west.
I do know there's been some social media traffic about the video that we're showing there. It looked like the former president was stumbling as he walked into that garbage truck. The other thing, Jake, is that one of the things that I think is remarkable is that Kamala Harris distanced herself in a significant way on the tarmac yesterday when she was asked about the president's comments that some feel was directed at Trump supporters, where she said, which kind of reiterated what you pointed out, which was her message in front of the White House earlier this week, which is that she is not at all supportive of anyone who denigrates someone because of their political views.
Yep, and we saw that, and then at the same time, right, Vlad, you saw the Trump campaign lean into what Biden said and continue to kind of take this story and stretch it out a couple of days, just like we've seen the Harris campaign attempt to do with those comments at Madison Square Garden. So again, in classic Trump campaign fashion, Donald Trump comes out on stage last night in Green Bay wearing that bright orange vest he wore. They did the photo op. We were there as CBS News reporters alongside the former president during that. And you saw them lean in and take time out of their day to double down and make that point to his supporters that to an everyman appeal that he can go get into a garbage truck and talk to the press and take them on, but also then to come out to a crowd in an arena full of people and off the bat say, what they said was wrong. And my message to the other side in being President Biden and Kamala Harris is, I love you and they don't.
So I'm curious, Jake, has the campaign at all responded to the questions that people have about the former president going into that garbage truck where he appeared to stumble? Because I recall back in 2016, Hillary Clinton stumbled coming out of a vehicle, and that drove the news cycle for nearly a week where people wondered if she was okay. I'm curious if the Trump campaign has responded to this video that we're watching here.
We have not seen anything from them yet. Obviously, over the rest of the day, we'll see what else comes out. But again, it's a garbage truck door. An older man. I think we get reminded sometimes in moments like this that it is a 70-plus-year-old man opening a heavy door. And to stumble back is certainly something that, again, if you are not a fan of the former president or on the fence about voting, it is all about optics. We saw this consistently with President Biden and his behavior walking on and off stage and interacting with voters. So certainly there's more to be tuned there.
Oh, by the way, he bit a baby chicken yesterday, which was a little baby actually dressed up as a chicken. So optics do often count for these things. Jake Rosen, always great to have you, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, while Trump is in New Mexico, Vice President Harris will be rallying voters in Phoenix, Arizona before heading to Reno and Las Vegas, Nevada. That is where we find CBS News campaign reporter Nidia Cavazos. Nidia, so is the Harris campaign still trying to manage this blowback from the GOP's disapproval of Biden's comments, or are they past that, given that the vice president reiterated her message that she's not about denigrating anybody because of their political views?
That really is the last we've heard from Harris or Harris's campaign on these comments. Harris came out yesterday during a gaggle right before boarding Air Force Two that while the president did come out and clarify his comments, she added that she strongly disapproves of any sort of criticism toward any voter based on who they support, whether it's Trump or whether it's Harris. And this plays into her campaign message that we've been seeing across the trail, that she promises and pledges to be a president for all. But what we also know is true is that the Harris campaign continues to capitalize off of the island of garbage comments that were made during the Trump rally on Sunday. They've seen a translation into, the support that we were initially seeing across social media. They're now seeing it in terms of people signing up to volunteer, people mobilizing, especially in crucial states like Pennsylvania, where they're seeing a large part of their Puerto Rican population come out and support Vice President Harris.
All right, we know Harris will be in Arizona later today. That's where President Biden won by a narrow margin in 2020. How does she hope to fire up more voter support? And I do note that, am I right about this, Nidia, that Jennifer Lopez, J-Lo, is going to be campaigning with the vice president at some point?
You're exactly right. J-Lo will be joining the campaign trail with Vice President Harris, but this is going to be in Nevada. So Harris will be starting off in Phoenix, where she's going to be mobilizing Mexican-American voters within the state. And to this, she's going to be alongside Governor Tim Walz, and the Mexican band Tigres del Norte is also going to be there to fire up the crowd, and in hopes of courting Latino voters and in hopes of courting the undecided voters that we still have with 5 days to go until Election Day. Now in Nevada, Harris is going to be joined by J-Lo, and this comes after J-Lo was one of the many celebrities with millions and millions of followers on social media platforms that came out in support of Harris after the island of garbage comments made on Sunday in New York. And so this all plays into, the latest efforts from the Harris campaign to court Latino voters, but specifically in these states where we know that there's a great population of Latinos. And when it comes down to the margins, every vote counts here.
Indeed it does. Nidia Cavazos for us this morning. Thank you, Nidia. Appreciate it. All right, happening this hour, Elon Musk has been ordered to appear in a Philadelphia courtroom for a hearing over the legality of his PAC's sweepstakes. He's been offering battleground state voters a chance to win $1 million if they sign his petition backing the First and Second Amendments. Musk's defense team is asking to move the lawsuit to federal court. We're going to bring you updates on this case when we get them. Meanwhile, be sure to stay with CBS News all day on Election Day. We'll have live reports from our election headquarters in New York and from our team spread out across the country. And remember, special coverage starts at 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on CBS News 24/7. All right, North Korea has test-fired an intercontinental ballistic missile with the potential range to reach the mainland United States. The overnight launch comes as U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin warns that North Korea has sent some 10,000 troops to train in eastern Russia, with some already moving closer to Ukraine. So for more on this, I want to bring in CBS News national security correspondent Charlie Daggett, who's joining me from the Pentagon to talk about this. So this is a big, big deal, Charlie.
It is a big deal, Vlad. First of all, we have to talk about the timing, right? It's no coincidence that this test happened on the same day that the South Korean defense minister and the foreign minister are here in D.C. There's going to be a news conference later with Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Secretary of State Antony Blinken. In fact, yesterday, genuinely, just down the hall, the South Korean defense minister said it was likely that North Korea would test an ICBM soon. And, of course, we're on the eve of U.S. elections. So South Korean and Japanese officials say it was fired almost vertically, straight up, and it flew for 86 minutes. It reached a height of more than 4,300 miles before falling into the sea. That would be North Korea's longest flight time and the highest altitude ever, which is worrying. The U.S., South Korea, and Japan all condemned the launch, the U.S. officials calling it a flagrant violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un observed the launch. He said it was an appropriate military action to show its neighbors North Korea's military strength, according to state media. It's the first. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, because the other point that I want to sort of put a fine point on, Charlie, is that you have reported that this is a missile that could potentially hit the United States.
It is. And they already had that kind of technology. They've proven that in tests, that in theory, they could reach the United States. The question is, were they testing it to carry a larger warhead? And that, of course, is concerning. They've had the distance. Now what can you put on it? So the DOD said they're aware of the launch in the official statement that they came out with, and they urged North Korea to refrain from further unlawful and destabilizing acts, in their words.
Charlie, let me ask you about the presence of North Korean troops in eastern Russia. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so just yesterday, again, in that press conference, the defense secretary said that the North Korean troops in Russia were, not surprisingly, at the top of the agenda in those meetings, and we're bound to hear more about it later in a briefing this afternoon. But we learned that the North Korean soldiers have been given Russian uniforms, they're carrying Russian weapons, and they are headed toward eastern Ukraine. So they're reportedly in the Kursk region. That's actually in Russia. It's a small team. It's been described as an advance party. Whether they're going to engage in combat inside Ukraine itself or fight Ukrainian troops in Russia, that's an open question that the Defense Secretary really couldn't answer. But he did say it was likely they would be involved in combat missions. And if so, they risk injury and death because they will be treated as co-belligerents, the words he's using. And the Ukrainians can use whatever force they have, whatever weapons they have, and that, of course, includes U.S. weapons.
All right, Charlie Daggett with some ominous news for us this morning from the Pentagon. Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Vlad.
All right, turning now to the war in the Middle East, where Israeli officials say at least 5 people, including 4 foreign workers, have been killed after a projectile was fired from Lebanon into the north of the country today. Now, this attack comes as top U.S. officials, including CIA Director William Burns, are expected to hold talks in the Middle East today, and the White House continues to push to de-escalate tensions in the region. Our Holly Williams has more from Tel Aviv.
Israeli airstrikes pounded the Baalbek region in southern Lebanon yesterday after Israel issued an evacuation warning to residents the day before. Lebanon's health ministry said at least 19 people were killed. Israel says it's targeting the militant group Hezbollah. Also yesterday, Hezbollah's new leader, Naim Qassem, gave his first public speech since taking command from an undisclosed location. He vowed to continue the work of his predecessor, who was killed by an Israeli airstrike last month. Israel's defense minister has called Qassem a, quote, temporary appointment, an apparent threat to kill him. Meanwhile, the head of the United Nations agency that helps Palestinian refugees has said that new Israeli laws passed this week will lead to more deaths in the Gaza Strip. On Monday, Israel's parliament voted to bar the agency, known as UNRWA, from operating inside Israel. Israel is a longtime critic of UNRWA and alleges that it's been infiltrated by Hamas in Gaza. Following a UN investigation, in August, the agency dismissed 9 staff members accused of taking part in the October 7th attacks. For context, UNRWA says it employs around 13,000 people in Gaza. The US said it is deeply concerned by the new legislation. Back to you.
All right, Holly, thank you very much. Meanwhile, the death toll from extreme flooding in Spain has tragically risen to 100 people. After the break, a look at the devastation around Valencia and the potential for more rain in the forecast. We'll be right back. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. We want to update you on a story we first told you about yesterday. The death toll from these extreme floods you're seeing in Spain has risen to more than 100 people. Check out these images that are coming to us showing us the rescues and the people in dire straits. We're talking about a year's worth of rain that fell in just a few hours. This is in the area of Valencia. Some people say they just had 30 minutes warning before they became trapped. BBC News correspondent Nikki Schiller has the latest from the ground.
I'm in the La Torre area, the city of Valencia, and you can see behind me the utter devastation that is here. You can see the cars that are piled one on top of the other. This goes on for about 200 meters, which shows you the force of the water that came through this area. Cars that have just been tossed like matchsticks on top of each other and down each of the roads that I can see here. It is absolute devastation. You can see cars here, and the water itself went up to about 1.5 meters. You can see that here on the wall. And the locals are now having to deal with what I can only describe as like something from a disaster movie. There is mud on all of the streets here. And I've seen people with water bottles, empty ones, going up to a pipe that was leaking in the road to fill it up. This area doesn't have any power at the moment, so people have been coming up asking if they can borrow a mobile phone charger so that they can talk to their loved ones. I have to say, people are just dazed. They've been crying in the street. People have been wearing plastic bags on their shoes to try and protect them from the mud. And the issue the authorities are going to have here is getting the help and the aid that the people in this area need. And this, remember, is a city centre. This isn't cut off like some of the towns and villages where dozens of people are still missing, and there are fears that that death toll may rise. Nikki Schiller, BBC News for CBS in Valencia. Back to you.
Thank you, Nikki. Appreciate it. Let's bring in CBS News New York meteorologist Vanessa Murdoch with the first look at the national forecast. Vanessa, it's great to see you.
Likewise, Vlad. Listen, we're talking about that severe weather in Spain. Locally, we are dealing with our own severe weather activity, especially yesterday. Let's check out the numbers. Looking at the storm reports, those are all the circles you see here. Yesterday afternoon and evening, severe weather rolled through portions of the Midwest, down through the Plain states, and this resulted in no actual tornadoes touching down, but 9 tornado warnings yesterday and numerous reports of wind damage as well as hail. Today, what's going to happen with this line is the threat of severe weather does push to the east from the lower Hudson Valley through the Mississippi River Valley. Today's threat, though, really would be that possibility of damaging wind, and the line is weakening as it moves east. So we will likely see far fewer threats and far fewer reports than we did yesterday. Yesterday, there were over 100 reports of wind damage. Let's turn the page to temperatures now, because the country is a split decision. Warm air on the east, cold air to the west, but really the focus is in the northeast. Record-setting warm today on Halloween for places like New York and Boston is certainly possible, and also the potential for snow up in places like Minneapolis. We'll talk more about that in my full forecast. Vlad, back to you.
All right, Vanessa, thank you very much. Great to see you on CBS News 24/7. The race for the White House is not the only contest next week. They could have major implications on the future of the country. The balance of power in the U.S. Senate is also at stake. One of the tightest races we are seeing in Texas right now is between these two men. Democratic Congressman Colin Allred is trying to unseat Republican Senator Ted Cruz. So for more on that race, let's bring in Jack Fink. He's a political reporter with CBS News Texas, and he joins me now. All right, Jack, so the latest polling shows Cruz with a razor-thin lead. He's been serving for quite some time in that seat, but I recall the last time he was up for re-election, it was also sort of razor-thin, and Mitch McConnell had to really pour in resources to fend off a run by Beto O'Rourke.
Well, good morning, Vlad. Nice to be with you. Yeah, this has really kind of been the big question here in Texas among us political reporters this time is why is there such a difference in the polling? When you look at the Real Clear Politics average of polls in Texas, former President Donald Trump is leading Vice President Kamala Harris by 7 percentage points. But when you look at those very same polls, Senator Ted Cruz is up by 4.1 percentage points ahead of Congressman Colin Allred. So everybody's asking, who is this Trump voter who's not also going to vote for Senator Ted Cruz? And I think there may be two things at work here. First, when you look at the polling, there are still undecided voters in the Senate race, about 3 to 5 percentage points. And one recent poll, the Texas Politics Project poll at UT Austin, showed that they forced voters, the undecided voters, to pick a side. And when they did that, Cruz came out ahead by 7 percentage points. So that may be a factor. The other thing that I think could be at work here is, unlike the presidential race, we're not seeing any of those ads by Kamala Harris or former President Trump when you turn on the local news. What we are seeing is all the time Senate ads, many of them, most of them by Colin Allred. He has outraised Senator Cruz this time around. And so that may be another factor. But I think there are some things to keep in mind here. Republicans still have an advantage. This is still Cruz's race to lose. A Democrat has not won statewide in Texas in more than 3 decades. I spoke with Senator John Cornyn, our senior senator, yesterday. He thinks Cruz is going to win. I spoke with the Texas GOP chair the day before. He also thinks, while close, that Cruz will win this as well.
So I guess the question for people outside of Texas is, what are the policy differences between the two men? I mean, I know in broad strokes, Republican policies and Democratic ones, but when people outside of Texas think of Ted Cruz, they think of somebody who's either sort of lockstep with the former President Donald Trump, which, if you're a Trump supporter, is something that you are happy about. But the other thing that comes to mind is Ted Cruz jetting off to Cancun when Texas was in dire straits. So I'm trying to understand, if this race is as close as it is, for those people who seem to be on the fence, what is it policy-wise that differentiates the two?
Well, to your point about Senator Cruz going to Cancun during our horrible, deadly storm in February of 2021, Congressman Allred, from the first day he jumped into this race, has reminded voters of that, and that's still in just about every campaign ad of his. But when you talk about policies, Texas is really very similar to the rest of the country. When you look at the polling, the top concerns are certainly border security and immigration, which they have been in Texas for a decade now, but also the economy and inflation. Further down the list is abortion and reproductive rights, but Congressman Allred has made this the biggest part of his issue. He's even been campaigning with a number of Texas women who had to leave the state to get an abortion during their troubled pregnancies. So this has been the dichotomy of the concerns here in Texas.
All right, Jack Fink for us this morning. Jack, thanks so much. Appreciate it. All right, climate change is fueling the severity and frequency of storms. Up next, a look at some of the 10 deadliest extreme weather events over the last 20 years. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following for you this morning. Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon says he supports Eric and Lyle Menendez's bid for full clemency and release after nearly 35 years behind bars. The brothers are serving life terms for the 1989 shotgun murders of their parents. Gascon announced earlier this month he would seek resentencing, but is now backing the defense petition for clemency, which was filed yesterday. The final decision on clemency will be made by Governor Gavin Newsom. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is now facing potential prosecution for allegedly lying during his testimony before Congress. A Republican-led House subcommittee has been investigating his handling of nursing homes where thousands of people died of COVID. One of the issues is Cuomo's part in a state health department report from June of 2020 that underestimated the nursing home death count by nearly half. That panel is now asking the Justice Department to look into the statements he made while under oath. A spokesperson for Cuomo told the New York Times the former governor did not lie to the committee. And today marks the start of Diwali, or the Hindu Festival of Lights, those who celebrate light and oil lamps and candles to mark the triumph of light over darkness and evil. Around 1 billion people worldwide observe the holiday. Over the centuries, Diwali has become a national festival in India that's also celebrated by some non-Hindu communities. And we're getting new details on arson attacks on ballot drop boxes in Oregon and Washington state. The FBI believes one man is responsible for the fires, which damaged hundreds of ballots, and they warn he might do it again. CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Skanga has been following this story for us and is ready to update us now. So what are you learning, Nicole?
Police believe the suspect here may actually have metalworking experience, and that's because of the detailed welding that was found on the incendiary devices that were used to set both drop boxes on fire. They also said it's very possible that he strikes again, and they're looking for a middle-aged white male driving a black or dark gray Volvo seen in surveillance images moments before the drop box in Portland caught fire. Now, a law enforcement source tells CBS News those incendiary devices, they were marked with the words "Free Gaza," but it's unclear if the suspect here is a pro-Palestinian sympathizer or just trying to drum up controversy. The FBI has taken both of those devices 2,000 miles east to their forensic laboratory in Huntsville, Alabama, for more analysis.
So, Nicole, how are federal authorities trying to prevent further incidents like this? I mean, you can't put guards at every drop box in the state.
Well, police in both places, in Oregon and Washington state, they are stepping up patrols around ballot drop boxes. And county officials are actually stressing that their election offices are safer today than ever before. Now, in Clark County, Washington, that's where that one ballot box was, all 22 ballot boxes actually do now have observers who are stationed there 24/7 up until Election Day. Ballot drop boxes also usually have fire suppression technology inside, and actually both of these boxes did. That's why in Portland, only 3 ballots were damaged, but the technology failed in Washington state. That's why 494 ballots were damaged there, and there's an unknown number that were completely destroyed. I mean, officials were just left with a pile of ash at the bottom of that drop box. But there is a silver lining here, Vlad. Of those 494 ballots recovered from inside that drop box in Washington, well, election officials say they've already identified nearly every one of those voters, and most of them have already requested a replacement ballot. Talk about following through on your civic duty. For the rest, officials are reaching out to them directly to send them that replacement ballot, and everyone can check their ballot status at votewa.gov. Vlad?
That is some heartening news that people would once again take the time out to do their civic duty. And Nicole Skanga reporting for us this morning. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
As a reminder, be sure to stay with CBS News for all-day coverage on Election Day. We'll have live reports from our election headquarters in New York and from our team spread out across the country. And remember, special coverage starts at 4 p.m. Eastern right here on CBS News 24/7. All right, more than 500,000 lives have been claimed by extreme global weather events that were intensified by man-made climate change. Those are the findings out today from a study that looked back at the 10 deadliest storms over the last 20 years. And experts say countries failing to move away from fossil fuels makes these events more severe and more likely. Joining me now from Dallas is CBS News climate correspondent David Schechter. So David, let's talk about the fact that climate change is responsible for all 10 of these events, and those events were seemingly made worse by the effects of climate change. So explain to our viewers what that study found and how it's possible.
Sure. Well, let's start with the fact that the planet has already warmed by 1.3 degrees Celsius, which that might not sound like a lot to a lot of people, but this report that we're just hearing about is showing us how destructive even that amount of warming has been. The nations of the world have pledged to keep warming to 1.5 degrees, but currently the world is on track for up to 3.1 degrees of warming by the end of the century. So this report is really it tells us that what we should expect in the future, which is more intense floods, more droughts, more fires, and unless we urgently cut our emissions of fossil fuels, we can expect more of that as the temperature is rising. And this report obviously saying that that is a fatal outcome.
So, David, take us into this study. How did researchers know that these events were as a result of climate change?
Vlad, I think I'll give a little science lesson here because I think this is actually pretty fascinating. Scientists from an international group called World Weather Attribution, they built two very sophisticated side-by-side computer models of the Earth. One model captures all the natural processes that happen on the planet, and in this first model, there's no climate change. The second model is the same as the first one, but represents the Earth as it is now, which has climate change in it. So when researchers then introduce a heat wave or a hurricane into both of those models, they can see that our hotter planet is making those events more destructive.
So we've been talking about it during the segment that there are these 10 deadliest weather events. I hope we have a graphic to show our viewers which they were, because I'm trying to, I could sort of come up with a few, but I might be wrong. So what were they?
Well, the deadliest events was a drought that hit Somalia in 2011 that killed 250,000 people. In 2008, about 140,000 people in Myanmar were killed by a tropical cyclone. And more recently, heat waves in Europe over the last 2 summers killed more than 90,000 people combined. And even though those storms and heat waves driven by climate change are also deadly in the United States, so far, none of the top 10 events have happened here in the U.S. And it really sets this election up in contrast when you have one candidate, Vice President Harris, who says climate change is an existential threat, and former President Trump, who calls it a hoax. Looking at the outcome of this election has an impact on climate change.
Yeah, David, I was living in France during the bouts of severe heat that France experienced in the mid-2000s,
yeah.
Early and mid-2000s, and it was remarkable. French authorities were baffled, and what was even all the more remarkable is that many people died in those heat waves because people don't really have air conditioning in France, and so a lot of older French people who were living at home alone succumbed to the effects of that heat. It was really, at the time, baffling, and now I guess science has figured out it's the result of climate change, and my guess is that it's only going to get worse.
Well, I just think the key thing to realize is that it would have been hot anyway, right? So there would have been a heat wave in France that summer that you were there, but that climate change juices the odds of it being worse. And so it is playing a role. It's enhancing these problems that we're having. It's not creating the weather. It makes it worse.
Wow. All right. David, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let's bring back CBS News meteorologist Vanessa Murdoch with another look at the national forecast. Hey, Vanessa.
Hello, Vlad. You were mentioning the deaths related to the heat wave over in Europe. Heat is the #1 weather-related killer, something we all have to keep in mind. Now, we are also discussing, of course, the possibility of severe weather here at home today. Looking at the big picture, there's a massive storm system taking up the midsection of the country. We're going to see severe weather out of the cold front and some snow, possibly, for places like Minnesota and northern Wisconsin. Already seeing the bits of snow beginning to fall. We're seeing that transition as colder air rolls in on the back of it. Out west, for the Cascades, there is actually a winter weather warning. There they could see at elevations 5,000 above 1 to 2 feet of snow over the next couple of days. But for Wisconsin and portions of Minneapolis in the purple, this is a winter weather advisory today with the snow beginning to fall into place. 4 to 6 inches of total snow possible there today. Now, we're going to talk about, as we look at this bigger picture, we do see out west that above 5,000 feet, possibility of 1 to 2 feet there. And we're looking at this. This is that winter storm warning in the deep pink that I discussed. If we want to progress now the graphics and just show you exactly what we expect out of severe weather. Yesterday, severe weather dropped numerous reports of damage as a result of powerful winds, hail as well. But the severe risk does trek to the east today, damaging wind our biggest concern. Not concerned about tornadic activity, hail, minimal risk of that happening. Cincinnati all the way down into Texas today, the threat for damaging wind. And then we see an escalation into the weekend of the threat for severe weather, especially from Amarillo down to, say, Fort Stockton, Texas. We could certainly see damaging wind and large hail moving into Saturday here in this section of the country. Driving those temperatures home, big point here in the Northeast especially is the possibility of record warm for the Halloween holiday. 80 degrees the high today in Boston. Tomorrow, 77. That's 22 degrees above normal. But we cannot ignore, rather, the colder air out to the west. Places like Missoula, 50 degrees, that's 4 degrees above normal there as well. Warm weather to the east, but we're starting to see it give way to cooler weather as we push past that severe weather threat today and tomorrow. Vlad, back to you.
All right, Vanessa, thank you very much. Appreciate you. I want to bring you an update on something we mentioned earlier in the show. Elon Musk did not appear at the hearing in Philadelphia on the legality of his PAC sweepstakes. Prosecutors just spoke a moment ago. Let's listen.
We are going to handle this case and continue to handle this case on mischief night. Elon Musk and his PAC, AmeriPAC, filed legal papers to have the case removed from this court to federal court, and we will proceed to federal court, and we will address the issues there and seek to have the matter remanded back to the state court. After all, this is a case that involves state law issues, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
All right, so the news again, this request from Elon Musk to move the case to federal court has apparently been accepted by the judge. This is, of course, in relation to that sweepstakes of him offering $1 million to people to sign his petition, his super PAC, supporting the Second Amendment and the Constitution. Obviously, we'll keep you updated throughout this legal battle. Meanwhile, did you guys know who won the World Series? Everybody's giving me dirty looks in the studio. The Dodgers won the World Series. Coming up, a look at how some of the celebrations in Los Angeles turned to looting. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Los Angeles Dodgers clinched a World Series title last night with a 7-6 win over the Yankees. It's the team's 8th title in franchise history. First baseman Freddie Freeman was awarded World Series MVP after hitting a home run in the first 4 games of the series. Let's bring in CBS News Los Angeles reporter Amanda Starantino for more on last night's big game. She's at a Dick's where the merchandise for the LA Dodgers is already selling out. What are you hearing from the fans?
Everyone is stoked here, Vlad. I mean, it's a great morning to be here in Los Angeles. We have a ton of fans here that are shopping. They've been out here since about 5 a.m., and they are getting all the goodies. So the shirt that I am wearing is what you saw the guys wearing on the field last night. So you can pick up this shirt here. Those are selling out pretty fast. We also have the shirt that will be for the parade tomorrow. So everyone wants to pick up one of these guys, too. But, Vlad, I've actually had this hat since I am from Los Angeles, since high school. So I'm going to be definitely buying my new World Series hat today to get up to date on that. But I was looking for you because I know you're in New York, and I figured you're probably going to want something out there. So I was thinking a towel to wipe your guys' tears. So some hankies for your Yankees over here. So go Dodgers right there. So this one is for you. I will be sending that to you. I know. Sending so much love from Los Angeles this morning. Yeah. A lot of people want the hats, though, with the World Series logo on it, and that's sold out. I know. But also people are looking for anything that has Freddie on it, our MVP. And I did ask because I wanted to buy one of those for myself. They are sold out on that, but you can find some good Mookie stuff and Ohtani as well. But lots of great options here. A lot of people shopping. Let's see what are you buying this morning?
Oh, I have no clue. I wanted a hat, but I can't find a hat.
The hats are all out. I know. So you're going to just... What's next?
Yeah, he's trying to find something.
Everybody's calling their family. I'm getting the list from everybody. I'm sure you guys are going to send me a list too. So lots of options here in Pasadena. Dick's Sporting Goods, the place to be apparently this morning. But, we're all looking forward to that parade. And the guys coming home right now at LAX. So exciting day to be in Los Angeles, Vlad. Hope you guys are doing okay.
Amanda, I do wear Dodgers gears, but it says Brooklyn Dodgers on it because, Brooklyn Dodgers. That's where they started. The Brooklyn Dodgers.
Awkward.
Yeah.
Awkward. Yeah. But they seem to be shining in the Golden State, so.
Yikes. Ooh, burn. Okay. Amanda, let me ask you really quickly, though, with all that fun that the fans are having this morning in anticipation of the big parade, there was a little bit of looting and destruction last night. What happened?
You know, it was pretty nasty. Not some responsible celebratory action that we saw here, unfortunately. Obviously, a lot of people celebrated, had a really good time. I know my cousins were celebrating at home, but what we saw on the streets this morning, very disappointing. Definitely a lot of looting. We knew this morning LAPD said that there were 12 arrests that happened that had to do with looting, vandalism, and also a DUI crash as well. So not good news there. Also, some crazy scenes of people trying to light, and they actually did put a metro bus on fire that got completely charged, got towed away this morning, and just a mess on the streets. A lot of debris left over and a lot of cleanup before that parade happens as well. So obviously disappointing to see that, but a lot of people very happy this morning with that Dodgers win.
I'm living vicariously through you, Amanda. Enjoy the good time. Enjoy the celebration. We'll check out.
Yes, I got a lot of
All right. Tone it down.
Just for you. Just for
Oh my
you.
God! All right.
Let me send you with your name on it, Vlad.
Tarantino for us this morning live in Los Angeles. Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate you. Happy Halloween. Speaking of Halloween, folks, coming up we have some scary good videos showing how people and even animals are celebrating. Stick around. It is October 31st, so you know what that means. It's Halloween. Trick-or-treating from around the world, and folks are going to dress up in their costumes and go door to door hoping to end up with some hopefully full-size candy bars. Do they even do that anymore? And so we're of course not hoping that there are raisins in that. Take a look at some of the video we've got coming into us here at the CBS News Broadcast Center of how people and even animals have been preparing for the holiday. What are we looking at here? The Ring is a contest called the Great Ghost Search, which is in hopes of catching spooky spirits on the popular door video cameras. This video shows what appears to be, what is that? It looks just like some lady. It's a ghostly man in Los Angeles making himself comfortable on the homeowner's patio, then taking a sip of their drink. Whether the ghost is real or not, you make the call. One winner of the contest will win $100,000. Check out this massive jack-o'-lantern display out of Transylvania. This is pretty cool. I can get into. This is at the university in Kentucky. The private university is showcasing more than 500 carved pumpkins on some of the steps of its buildings, but the pumpkins won't go to waste. They will later be collected as feed for local livestock. And gotta love this. This is so cute. Some lion cubs and meerkats at the London Zoo had some playtime this week with jack-o'-lanterns that were filled with mealworms and dusted with spices. It's part of the annual Boo at the Zoo event. Boo at the Zoo. Vanessa, Boo at the Zoo.
I've been to Boo at the Zoo. Yes.
What the? Are you? Is that what?
Yes, when I had my children were littler, we went to Boo at the Zoo, and it's so much fun. It's a great time.
Okay, well,
Yes.
there you have it, folks. Live report right there from Vanessa Murdoch before she gives us the last look at our natural forecast.
Yes, we're going to talk about the trick-or-treating forecast, the all-important gather the goodies. Maybe Vlad gets some full-size candy bars, right? Only one person on my block is brave enough to hand those out. Across the country, some of the soggier spots for trick-or-treating today will be Seattle. 50 degrees with wet weather as trick-or-treating starts to unfold there. This is 4 o'clock Eastern time, so around 1 o'clock Pacific time, 50 and rainy in Seattle. Minneapolis, you're starting to see that transition from rain to snow. We've got beautiful sunshine for Denver, Kansas City, Dallas, 73 in Dallas, mid-50s for Denver and Kansas City. And then we take you up to the northeast. We're going to look at 73 degrees as we make our way into the evening hours now after record warmth expected this afternoon. Portland 64, and you notice that breezy icon. Those inflatable costumes might be a little troublesome in breezy places. I think Denver, too, is going to be on the breezy side today. Let's fast forward from Halloween to daylight saving. You lose. No, you don't lose. You gain an hour of sleep Saturday night into Sunday, folks. But that also means the sun will set that hour earlier, which many despise. Vlad, back to you.
So wait, Vanessa, how old are your kids now? Are they still going trick-or-treating?
Yes, trick-or-treating. I've got a 15-year-old, nearly 15, Abby Kadabi, and a 10-year-old going as Anxiety from Inside Out. Her whole friend group are going to be each of the characters from Inside Out.
I love it. I love it. Happy Halloween to them.
Yes.
Thanks, Vanessa. We'll talk to you later. That does it for me, but stay right there. Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco with all the breaking news. We'll see you next time.